What's up, everybody? Go Burns doing a review for Stranger Things 2, or Stranger Things Season 2, whatever you want to call it. Officially out on Netflix, all 9 episodes, chapters. You get the idea. So I really did love the first season of Stranger Things. Obviously set in the 80s. Has a lot of sci-fi horror vibe to it, a lot of nostalgia as well. And I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. I loved Stranger Things 2. I absolutely did. I binged watched it over the past 2 days, like Saturday night. I finally got around to watching 5 of the episodes, and then Sunday I was able to knock out the other 4. So there's 9 episodes, 9 chapters for Stranger Things 2. And most of the characters come back, including some new ones that are added. And for the most part, the new ones eventually do fit in with the Stranger Things world. They find their place in Hawkins, Indiana. There might be one that I really don't like, but you're not meant to like that character. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into spoilers until I inform you about the spoilers. Obviously, I would not do that. What kind of person would I be to spoil something for you? So let's go forward to my thoughts. Now, obviously, Stranger Things, when it came out, was instantly a success. A lot of people absolutely loved it. It got rave reviews for the story, the setting, the characters, and a lot of people were worried about whether or not the Duffer Brothers were going to, get up to that same level with Stranger Things 2 or Season 2. And I feel like they succeeded. I feel like that they accomplished something by making lightning strike twice. Now, some people may say that it was better than the first season. Some people are going to say it might have been worse. Some people will say it's about the same. I will say that it's up there with the first season of Stranger Things. And if you loved the first season of Stranger Things, you're going to love Stranger Things 2 as well. And it takes place a year after the events of Stranger Things, so 1 year later, which I think is really cool. It makes sense because, there's a year between the two seasons, and obviously most of the actors are kids. They're in their teens, and so, as you know, with kids, they do age, a lot more obviously than adults do once we reach that certain point in life, right? So I'm glad that they're going that route. So hopefully whenever they do, Stranger Things 3, it'll probably be a year later from season 2's ending. And there's going to be, from what I read about a month ago, is the Duffer's plan is 4 seasons of Stranger Things. So that means that they most likely have a lot of this already written out, and they have an arc planned along with the plot, the story, where it's going to go the next 2 seasons, and they're going to wrap it up after 4 seasons. And I think that's fantastic. That's something that I wish more shows would do, because a show starts off really good, and because it's so successful, there's always that temptation to keep making new seasons. And eventually the writers, the producers, they do start to run out of ideas. And as one thing is resolved and another plot is resolved, eventually you get to the point where you're like, well, you know what, this show is a little long in the tooth. And I'm really happy to hear that. It's bittersweet because that means we only have 2 more seasons of Stranger Things to look forward to. But hopefully they'll both be on par with seasons 1 and 2. And I think that raises the bar for Stranger Things 3, because the first season and Stranger Things 2 were both really good. I enjoyed binge watching over the past weekend Stranger Things 2 just as much, if not more, than I did with the first season last year. And they really do flesh out the characters a lot more. They add a lot more to the characters because, we established these characters in the first season, like the kids, Mike, Will, Lucas, Dusty, along with Elle or Jane or Eleven, whatever you call her. So they get fleshed out a lot more, along with some of the secondary characters like Nancy, Steve, Jonathan, along with Will and Jonathan's mom, Jim Hopper, the police chief, And we get more time with them, built on the first season, adding a bit more to each character, which is fantastic because, we're really attached to these characters. You become even more attached to them, throughout the second season. And you see how each of them, grow in a different way. And, several of them go in different directions. And, there's a slow burn that happens between two of the characters. We won't get into that until the spoiler section. But it's something you really get excited about because you want these two to be eventually reunited together. And it's a slow burn, but the payoff is really good. And they do, like I mentioned, they introduce several new characters. And two actors that are well known. Sean Astin, who played Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings. He plays a character in Stranger Things 2. And Paul Reiser from Mad About You. Loved Paul Reiser, Mad About You, by the way. And Helen Hunt, back when I was a kid. Don't judge me. I loved that show. It was like a guilty pleasure. Along with, Frasier and Seinfeld. I don't know. I like that show. But anyways, it was cool to see Paul Reiser back on the screen. And I liked his role as well, along with Sean Astin's character. So I liked both characters very much. And like I mentioned, there's at least one character I didn't like, but I think that's kind of the point. You're not supposed to like that character. And then, like I mentioned, there's two other characters you get introduced to as well. Not trying to spoil anything, but we obviously get new characters with Stranger Things 2 to go along with the characters from the first season. And for the most part, it fits in rather well. It's building the world, even more so expanding it, the lore, the story, the setting. And I would say that overall, it adds to, what season 1 brought forward. And I don't really think of anything off the top of my head that I would say I didn't like. Even if there were one or two characters I didn't like, I think it was necessary to have those unlikable characters for obvious reasons. Because you're not supposed to like every single character in a show, especially a good show. I mean, like, for example, in Game of Thrones, most people don't like Cersei, but Lena Headey is a fantastic actress. The point is, you're not supposed to like her character. I mean, some people might like her, but those people have serious issues. But that's kind of the point. I mean, the episodes, I thought they were all very well written. I really can't think of a chapter episode that I did not like. I felt like it kept getting better and better, and it got very intense. A lot of shit went down. A lot of big stuff transpired. A lot of bad things happened. And I feel like a lot of it got resolved pretty well by the end of Stranger Things 2, by the season finale. I thought a lot of things were tied up, more or less. But obviously cliffhanger because, as I mentioned, the Duffer Brothers have 2 more seasons planned of Stranger Things, or Stranger Things 3, Stranger Things 4, more chapters coming up, hopefully, I guess 2018, 2019, I'm guessing that's the plan. But overall, if you loved the first season of Stranger Things, if you fell in love with the characters, you will once again, along with the setting, along with Hawkins, Indiana, along with the story. It builds up on it, it adds to it, it doesn't forget the stuff that transpired last season. You have these characters that are still dealing with everything that happened a year prior. So it's not like there was a reset button and they moved on from the tragic events that occurred with the death of at least one character in particular. And obviously, if you're watching this review, you probably already watched the first season. At least you should have already. I'll go ahead and mention her, Barbara. Okay, so Barbara's not forgotten in Stranger Things 2. A lot of people assume that Barbara was not going to get any love in season 2, but she definitely does, and she is a driving factor for several of the characters for Stranger Things 2 for what was done to her, and the effect that her loss had on not only her friends but also on her family as well. So that's one thing I really loved about Stranger Things is it continues to build upon the world that was set with the first season by the Duffer Brothers. So I applaud everybody involved with the show, the writers, the executive producers, the actors, the actresses, as well as everyone that is part of the staff, everyone that does the props and sets up, the camera work and the music, the score. Of course, everyone absolutely loves that retro score of Stranger Things, and anyone that skips through that, what's wrong with you? But I will say that, Yes, it's definitely worth binge watching as soon as you have a chance to binge watch it, especially if you love the first season and you already have Netflix. What are you waiting for? Unless, life is obviously keeping you from watching it. I would highly recommend you get around to getting back to the 80s, back to Hawkins, Indiana, as soon as possible, because Stranger Things 2 was fantastic. On par with the first season of Stranger Things. Okay, so now that we got the non-spoilers out of the way, I hope I did a good job of avoiding the spoilers. We're moving on to spoilers now. So you've been warned. For those of you that have yet to watch Stranger Things 2, I suggest you stop the video, go binge watch, and then come back. Or you don't have to come back if you don't want to. I appreciate all of you that took the time to watch this video, by the way. So we're getting into spoilers now for the rest of us that have already binged watched Stranger Things 2, whether it was Friday when it came out on the 27th, or you did it like I did over the weekend, kind of spread it out a little bit. Because, you want to make those 9 chapters last as long as possible. So, yeah, like I said, I loved it. It was great. And it's hard to say, whether or not I think it's better than the first season, because I love the first season, but I also love Stranger Things 2, and that's something very good. It's a good thing to come to a new show and then go to the second season with high expectations and then have those high expectations, satisfied. And so let's talk about what basically happens. Okay, so a year later, and at the end of season 1, obviously Will was rescued, but there was something wrong with Will, obviously. And he's still seeing the upside down world. And now he's seeing some sort of big giant creature. And the big giant creature, I think, is being set up to be a main baddie going forward into Stranger Things. And I think the kids end up calling him a mind flayer. I think that's what they call him, the mind flayer, or the shadow monster. And he ends up infecting Will. And basically Will becomes kind of a spy for the mind flayer, as most of you watched already. You better have watched already. Okay, this is the spoiler section, duh. And I love the way it's set up, because the fact that you had all the trees rotting, you had crops rotting, and you're like, what the hell is going on in this town? Why is shit rotting? And of course, we found out why, because the scientist at the lab, which is led by, I think, Reiser's new character. I think his name's Murray, I believe. I could be wrong about that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I didn't jot down any notes, by the way. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I just finished watching it like 20 minutes ago. But yeah, I mean, his character is a lot better than Renner's. Renner's was like a really bad guy scientist, but you learn a little bit more about Murray. He's very complicated. He's trying to keep the secrets. He's trying to make things right. He's trying to resolve this issue that's still ongoing beneath Hawkins, the fact that there's still this opening, the gate's still open with the upside down. And unfortunately, as most of you know by now, those of you that actually binge watched season 2, shit went down. Because, the demi-dogs come, and, Will's possessed, and it turns out, fortunately for all of us that loved Eleven, she's still alive. She's been kept safe by Hopper, which I think was really cool. I love to see their dynamic and how they don't exactly get along, because they're always having this friction. They have this kind of father-daughter thing going on. But, yeah, and then the fact that you see a lot of growth of Eleven, because she finds out that her mom's still alive, and then she goes to find her mom, and her mom leads her to 8. And we're introduced to 8. What's her name, Carly? Or I forgot what her name was. But she was another one of the lab rats at the lab. She has powers like mental powers, and we're actually introduced to her at the very beginning of Stranger Things 2, and it's really cool to see the dynamic between them two during the one episode that they're together in, and I hope we see more of that in season 3 going forward. Hopefully we'll see 8's return. I'm gonna call her 8 because that was her number, and a lot of people call L11 or Jane. And I think that's what they're referring to her now as, is simply Jane. But yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. I loved it. I mean, I felt like that was the 80s. I felt like, everything worked very well. The sci-fi horror vibe, along with the first season, and the character I really didn't like is obviously what Billy, Mr. Mullet with the badass muscle car, and the way he, treated his stepsister. At first, you're kind of like not feeling Max, the new girl, but she ends up. I think she ends up fitting into the party pretty well. And I'll say one thing: a lot of people didn't like the way Lucas was in season 1. I really feel like that they fleshed out his character a lot better in season 2. And I loved his little sister. His little sister was always on his ass throughout season 2. So yeah, I really do think that if there's a character that got a lot of necessary growth from season 1 to season 2, it was definitely Lucas. Dusty as well. I mean, Dusty was, he was treated pretty well in season 1. Season 2, he makes a pretty big mistake with the polywog, aka what turns out to be what they call it, whatever that creature thing is. But anyways, I love the dynamic between all the characters, even the new characters. And I think even if you don't like Billy, I feel like he's kind of necessary because you're supposed to have antagonists in the series. And I do find it weird that there's this, love triangle between Nancy and, Steve. And of course, Steve rose up again to be a hero along with Jonathan, Will's brother. And then it's like, because at the beginning of the season, she's with Steve, and have they now moved on to her and Jonathan together? I guess that's the direction they've gone. And Steven, unfortunately, has kind of accepted that, even though Steven is a pretty cool guy. So it'll be fascinating to see how that transpires, even though that's just kind of like one of those things on the side you're not really too concerned about compared to the main story, unless you really like Nancy like I do. But anyways, the big thing that I think a lot of us were excited about was the fact that eventually, Mike and Jane L get reunited. And there was kind of a close call that nearly happened at the school. And I really feel like that was kind of a cliche way of, preventing that, from happening sooner. The fact that it just so happened that, Mike was talking to Max and they were kind of having a moment, even though it really wasn't a moment, because, and then all of a sudden Elle just happens to show up at that moment. And, she knows that Mike still has a thing for her and he still has a thing for her and she still has a thing for him. So I don't know why Max was such an issue for Elle, but obviously a little jealousy there from that one moment. Because, she's been keeping tabs on him because over the past year, Mike has been, sitting under her little, thing, which he still has, her little cubbyhole, with his walkie-talkie, communicating to her. And for the past 300-something days, she's been there. I mean, even though she hasn't been able to talk to him because she's had to remain hidden, so she wasn't found, she known that he was trying to reach out to her for nearly a year now. And so it's obvious that Mike, still has deep feelings for Elle and vice versa. So it was very heartwarming to see them two reunited back together. That was really cool. I don't know why. I just found it. I guess it kind of takes you back to when you're a kid, you're a teenager, and you have that first love thing going on. It may work out, it may not work out, but still, it's kind of cool to be along for that journey, along with the growth that I feel like all the characters had along the way. And yeah, I mean, I like the way it ended. I like the way it wrapped up. I even like the fact that they kind of pulled a Game of Thrones when they were about to have the major head off, when the Diggy Dogs, or what are they all? You know what I'm talking about. When they were about to attack the lab from beneath, to the very next chapter, chapter 7. Then they followed Elle's journey to Chicago to find her lost sister. I love that. I mean, some people didn't like it for some reason. I enjoyed it. And that happens all the time in Game of Thrones because you have an ensemble cast of characters. And I think it was important for them to give Jane that journey, from, her mom's house, to Chicago, to find 8, and to, build that rapport with her and realize that they, are kind of going in two different directions, whereas 8 wants revenge. She wants to make everybody involved with what was done to those two pay for what they did. But, so does 11 to a certain point, but at the same time, Hawkins has become her home, and she has a bond with Hopper as well as the rest of the party, Lucas, along with Dusty, Will, and especially Mike, obviously. And that's where she feels more like she actually belongs. And it was really touching that, we were able to get, I guess you could say, a happy ending with season 2, the finale. But at the same time, cliffhanger, upside down world still there. The mind flayers still there, lurking in the shadows, even though, El closed the door, the gate, whatever. So obviously, they're going to keep that going. I don't know how they're going to keep that going into season 3. And that is actually a concern of mine because the first 2 seasons were just so freaking good. You just got to wonder, well, how the hell are they going to keep this going? Because how do you top those first 2 seasons? They're fantastic. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Duffer Brothers know what they're doing, and they brought some other writers on board, and I liked all the episodes for the most part. I liked all 9 episodes, all 9 chapters. I'm trying to think of something I didn't like, and with the exception of Billy, but you're not meant to like Billy. I did find that fascinating though, like this chemistry that was sparked between Billy and Mike and Nancy's mom, because like Nancy and Mike's mom is hot, okay, and like their dad is like this older doofus. Obviously, he probably has money. I don't really remember what he did exactly. It's not important, I suppose, but it never really felt like that those two were a good couple. It didn't really feel like they worked because like she was like way more hotter than he is. But at the same time, maybe she's just aged well like a fine wine. But to see the little chemistry sparked, in this moment between like nothing else happened yet. It might happen in season 3, but it's obvious that Billy's kind of like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, hey, how you doing? So I don't know. I mean, I'm not advocating adultery or being unfaithful to your spouse. I'm just saying that there's just this weird vibe going on between the two, even though I absolutely don't really care for Billy. But now I want to talk about Bob. Okay, so Bob, played by Sean Astin, a.k.a. Samwise Gamgee, basically was Samwise Gamgee in Stranger Things, more or less. He was the hero. One of the heroes. There are several heroes. And it's sad because, I really felt like, they made a great relationship between him and Winona Ryder's character, Will and Jonathan's mom. And it was nice to see that because throughout the entire first season, Will and Jonathan's mom, just wasn't doing so well. She was always worrying about her sons and worrying about all this bullshit going on because, Will was missing throughout most of the season. And she was still worrying about Will and the after effects. But it was nice to have that ray of sunshine in her life, which was Bob. And it turns out Bob was a good guy. He was a nice guy. He had a crush on her when they were kids, apparently. And, he works at Radio Shack. And he's just an all-around great guy. In other words, he had to die. They had to kill him off. I had a feeling, that, whenever he said he was going to go play Jurassic Park and get the park turned back on, what I'm saying. I'm just using that analogy, that comparison, because of what happened in Jurassic Park. I had a feeling that he was not going to survive and make it back. Unfortunately, I was right. He did die, and it sucks. But at the same time, I could definitely see like Winona Ryder's character along with Hopper. They end up having a thing going into season 3 and 4. I could see that transpiring as well because Hopper, big strapping police chief, and her have history, and they're both single now. So I can see that happening as well. But regarding the main baddie, the Mind Flayer, I don't know how that's going to play out because, like I said, Jane closed the gate. And I guess he's going to find a way to reopen it. And it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Is 8 going to play a part in that? Jane's sister, quote-unquote sister, she was stuck in there with her in the lab as well, experimented on by Rainier. And it was alluded to that Rainier wasn't killed. And, I mean, if memory serves, I thought he was killed. I could be wrong about that. But maybe Rainier's not dead. Maybe he's going to come back. Maybe he's the main baddie in season 3. Or maybe 8's the main baddie. Maybe she's jaded because 11 didn't go with her on her quest. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see which direction they go with season 3 of Stranger Things. But overall, I love the first 2 seasons, and I hope that the Duffer Brothers have a plan. I mean, I think they do because they said that they were only going to go 4 seasons and that was it. So that implies to me that they had a start, a middle, and an end already, I guess, kind of mapped out, maybe not completely. But I do love the characters. I love the setting in the 80s. I love the sci-fi horror vibe of Stranger Things. And I'm very much looking forward to season 3. Hopefully we'll get that coming up October 2018. Let me know below in the comments section. What were your thoughts? What were your opinions? How did you feel about Stranger Things 2?